Eagle Home Mortgage, like most strong and stable S&P 500 companies, allows you to go online, get the answers to your questions, calculators so you can compare what's best for you, and even apply for the loan. Because Eagle Home Mortgage is a large national company, they offer the full range of standard and niche products at very competitive rates. What makes Eagle Home Mortgage different is the entire process of getting the loan from pre-approval through funding is done here in the Valley by people you know and trust. Whether you're a first-time buyer or an experienced homeowner, you'll appreciate the peace of mind that comes from having a local loan officer listen to your particular needs and determine what loan is best for you. Having a local in-house staff to process and underwrite your loan assures that you'll have a smooth and on-time closing. Eagle Home Mortgage is located at 729 South Bridgeway Place, just north of the river in Eagle, or call 208-938-3245, or go to eaglehomemortgage.com and click Idaho.
And now, your friend in the real estate business, John Adamson.
Hi folks, welcome to Property Line Today. I'm John Adamson. I'm the broker with the Realty Management Associates Realty Center and the host of Property Line. My co-host today is
Paul Anderson with Eagle Home Mortgage. Good to be back, John.
And Paul's one of the finest mortgage loan officers in the Valley. I've used him for years with my clients. And he's also as the co-host of my radio show for many, many years, too.
And it's good to be back on TV.
It's good to have you back,
thank
too.
you.
We're going to answer questions that you've sent in on buying, selling, or investing in real estate. If you have a question, now would be a good time to go to the computer, www.PropertyLineToday.net. Up in the right-hand side, it says Ask a Question. Go ahead and ask a question. We'll read it later at the end of the show. Or if you have a question, you can call it in at 830-2557. Always like to start the show with anything that's come up in the news that's going to affect you if you're selling a home or buying a home or thinking about investing in a home. The one came from the Daily Real Estate News. It was headlined, Industry Hears Calls for Credit Score Changes. Now, they're talking about the way, the credit scores are calculated.
Right.
Fair Isaac is pretty much the model that most people use for the FICO scores. Prior to the recession, 720 would get you any kind of loan you wanted. Now, on a national average, that's bumped up to 740. Now, the 20 points doesn't sound like much, but it's hard to get that extra 20 points.
I'd like to know where they get that information from, because where I'm at and where I've been throughout most of my career, 720 has always been the gold standard.
Always.
Yeah, and we're not seeing the 740 change. And what we're seeing now, ironically, is a little bit of relaxing on score requirements. I agree. I think that the scoring models, they need to make some changes, because one thing I will see a lot when people come in is, I think the number I saw one time, John, was about 43% of credit reports contain some sort of an inaccuracy. And once again, it's not something that Equifax or TransUnion or Experian has done. They just gather the information that's given to them and they process it. But the part that bothers me is...
You said about 40%?
About 43%.
See, now that's why it's important that if you're thinking about buying a home, you don't start looking at homes. No. You get your team together, your realtor, your lender, you go with them to the lender, start your loan application, find out what's the best loan for you, have your credit pulled, see if there's any mistakes, because it takes a while sometimes to clean up the mistakes.
It does, but I agree. Where I was going with that is, so that's a significant number. That's almost half.
Right.
It's kind of like the burden of proof falls upon the consumer, and that part of it I don't like, because I think if somebody has...
You're guilty until proven innocent.
I think if somebody has made an error and there's something erroneous on your credit report, people don't look at their credit report every month. So if there's something on there, and there should be a way to be able to go back in time and reconcile that for them, because a lot of times it unjustly penalizes the consumer.
And month after month after month.
Month after month, yeah. And you've seen people, and I see people where, You know, they'll go through a bankruptcy, and you'll see the bankruptcy paperwork, and it lists all the debts that are to be discharged and checked. And for some reason, somewhere along the way, something doesn't correspond, and they have something that's showing as a bad debt from 2 years ago, and it's reported.
The one that I see really common is where the Sears card will be due on the first of the month, but they always pay their bills at the end of the month. They never miss paying Sears, but it works out that they're 1 month late.
Right.
And so that 30 days late just continues over and over and over again.
Rolling 30.
If they would have just gone ahead and paid it on the first to begin with, and then, you know, maybe paid one ahead, and paid it when they wanted it, but now they have a year's worth of 30 days late.
Well, and there's things like residual interest. I was talking to a gentleman from Texas yesterday. He was up over the Easter weekend, and he was looking at buying a home for his daughter who's going to go to BSU. And so he was referred to me, talked to him Saturday, got his credit pulled, and called him and said, hey, found a mortgage that showed a late payment on there. And what it was is he went in and he paid the mortgage off, and then they calculated an extra portion of interest as like $1.38. He said, so I write him a $27,000 check, and because of that $1.38, it started showing up as a late payment on my credit.
Isn't that crazy?
And so he said, so then I sent him a check for $2 or something like that, and then they come back and they send me a refund check for 5 cents.
Now, I know the realtors, the mortgage bankers, a lot of trade groups, they're trying to get the government to ease up a little bit on the credit requirements, or actually working with people like Fair Isaac,
Right.
and trying to get the whole algorithm rewritten. They're finding that the younger people, medical bills, free Obamacare, we knew there was a healthcare crisis. Young people did not have the right kind of health insurance, so they need to report health bills differently. The other thing too is, you know, the number of renters. People have chosen to rent more or had to rent instead of buy. And so there should be some kind of a calculation. Did you pay $1,050 a month in rent, and did you do it for 3 years or 4 years and never be late? That's a pretty good.
Some property managers are now starting to report to credit, so they can't.
I tell you, I would make it a requirement that if you were renting someplace, that the property manager reported to credit.
I mean, there's a subscriber fee to report to the bureaus, and I don't know what that is because we were talking about that the other day. But like I said, what I would like to see is a way when there is an error on their credit report, not only just to remove it, but to give them some sort of, be able to almost like compensate them for what they've lost. So if you've had something reporting erroneously on your credit for 8 months and slowed your score 40 points, how do we get that back? Because really you've done nothing wrong, but now you're suffering the consequences of it.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll see some more definite changes, and I hope it's not like some of the things that we've seen in the Obama administration, great ideas, slow to implement.
Right.
Because I really think this is something that needs to be implemented sooner than later.
You know, and there are programs. We utilize a thing called Score Analyzer, and it's a program where we can go in and we can run what-if scenarios on their credit, and I used it recently to help a gentleman get just above the point where he needed to be to get down payment assistance from Idaho Housing. And it took about 2 weeks, but every case, it's an individual case.
Right. Another headline that came out this week, it was headline, "Get the timing right for your open house." Now, if you're a regular Property Line viewer, you'll know open houses are primarily for the realtor's benefit. They said open houses, hopefully somebody will come in who's looking to buy a home, they'll get their name, address, email, follow up, and they'll end up selling another home. Less than 3% of all the homes in the nation are sold because someone shows up at an open house. However, you know, the timing's all important. Sunday is still the #1 day of the week for an open house. You need to look at the faith base, because usually Sunday after church is the best time to hold an open house. Now, on a Saturday, which is the second best day, it's usually in the morning from like 10 to 1, where on Sunday they're recommending 2 to 4. The one place where I found interesting, where weekday open houses are done, it's on the west part of the United States, right here where we live.
Huh.
And I thought, that doesn't seem right. I don't see open houses on the weekdays very often. But then I thought, I get invited to an open house all the time. usually Wednesday, Thursday, Friday during the week, because the realtors have got smart enough that if you're a realtor and it's harder to sell something that you haven't seen. So most of the open houses here in the Boise Valley aren't for, looky-lookers to come in and see how well your house is decorated. It's for agents so that they can come, see the house, talk amongst them if it's a good buy or not, what terms might be available. So when they go back to the office and they get a call, they can say, I just came from a killer deal.
Do a broker's open.
Yeah, and that's what they're saying in the West, where we're at, during the week seems to be very popular as well.
Well, and I'm seeing people also close to schools doing them from 3 to 5
When kids get out?
Kids get out, people are walking their kids home from school or taking their kids home from school. I've talked to some agents who are
If you were in
having
a
great success.
high rental neighborhood and you had a home for sale, that might,
Or close to a school.
Yeah, but otherwise you might have your treats taken in a hurry.
That's true too.
So, mortgage rates, that's the good news. I mean, about a month and a half ago, they were 3.5 ago, they're going to shoot back up, and they did. They kind of went over 4, but then they came back down under 4. And we now have a third week of mortgage prices going down, not by very much,
Right.
but the 30-year is still under 4%. The 15-year, which seems to be really popular for people refinancing, it's below, either just slightly above or slightly below 3%.
Yep. And
the 5, 10 adjustables, they're running anywhere from a low of about 2.25 on up to a high of just under 3%.
Yeah.
And so super interest rates. And people applying for mortgages, that is, we reported last week it was the highest since 2008.
Yep.
And it's even higher this week than it was last week.
We're on a 21-month high, and that's for purchases. For new mortgage applications, refinances dropped, but new purchases are up. But you mentioned rates are really good right now, guys. I'm going to tell you, rates have been good for years.
For years, yeah.
I think we're a little rate spoiled, if you will. If you look at it, since they've been tracking mortgage rates since the early 70s, so we have about 40 years of data. The rate over that time, the average has been well over 8%. We're at half or better than that. So,
yeah, I agree.
I got nothing else to say on rates except they're really good.
Yeah, and that's the number one factor. I mean, rates is far more important than the price that you pay over the long run of home ownership. Another thing, we talk a lot about the millennials. This is this new first-time home buyer, this new generation, best educated generation we've ever had. A good percentage of them still living at homes, big student loans that have to be paid, very reluctant to buy a home. And a new study came out and said millennial buyers may need parents' help. And so they're finding that these millennials, 18 to 38, that a big percentage, 67%, will need some sort of financial help, either with closing costs, down payment, or both, from their parents or grandparents in order to have enough money to buy. And, we constantly say you don't need 20% to buy a home.
Right.
You can do it for as little as nothing down, 3%, 5%, 10%. But, 67, that's almost 3 out of 4, 2 out of 3 of these millennials. They need financial help to buy a home.
Right.
We have mom and dad that have taken big hits through the Great Depression, so it's a little harder for them to help. This might be one of their, and, the millennials, even if they have the money from their folks their folks have the money.
Right.
They saw the hardship mom and dad went through, and they're a little reluctant to want to borrow from mom and dad because they, even if they can, because they saw some of the pain they endured.
A little snake bit.
Yep.
So, yeah, but you mentioned it. For starters, gosh, I don't know how many times I hear, but I don't have 20%. While 20% is ideal, it's not required. So, you mentioned VA financing if you happen to be eligible, 100% financing. US RDA financing if you go into a rural area. CUNA, STAR, Middleton, things like that, 100% financing. Now, you can also go to Idaho Housing. We do a lot of business with Idaho Housing, and we actually do all of it in-house.
And they have a zero down program.
Yep, they have 100%. They have gift funds. They have good rewards
And
seconds.
since you brought up veterans, before we take a break and take your questions, the TV station here, in cooperation with Property Line, is doing the Homes for Idaho Heroes. And if you're a veteran, if you're a firefighter, a policeman, or a teacher in the public school system, and you buy a house that's eligible, you're going to get at least $1,000, and you may get up to $10,000 as a gift from the realtors, the title companies, the lenders, and the seller, as a gift for your service, saying we're glad to have heroes like you living in the valley, and as a thank you for buying that house. So if you want more information on Homes for Idaho Heroes, again, go to Property Line Today and say send us some more information. We'll be more than glad to do that. It's a gift that you get at closing, and it doesn't have to be repaid. And it's a nice way of thanking our vets and our first responders.
It's one of the greatest ways to say thank you for everything you've done.
Exactly. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, and when we get back, we'll answer any questions that you have on buying, selling, or investing. Call us at 830-2557 or go to PropertyLineToday.net. We'll be right back. The Homes for Idaho Heroes program. If you're a veteran, a fireman, this home can be purchased with zero down. The seller will pay all of the closing costs. Never has to be paid back. Gift for your service. Well, folks, we don't have that many questions this week. I think everyone ate too much for Easter, or maybe they're spending too much time trying to get their taxes done. I'm not sure.
Well, those are pretty good reasons, but the questions we do have are really good, you guys. So
And
thank you.
while we're answering the questions that have come in, if you have a question, go ahead and call us at 830-2557. And if you heard something at the start of the show, some of the news you can use, and you have a question, go to www.PropertyLineToday.net. Up in the right-hand corner, it says Ask a Question. Click it and send us a question. Might even be able to get it on yet today.
Here we go.
You want to start with the first question?
Absolutely. Now, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but it looks like it's Rickle or Rochelle, or however you pronounce it, writes in and said, I have got on some list and I am having 10 or more realtors calling me every day wanting to tell me how I can have the best home buying experience if I will just do business with them, forsaking all others. How can I get off this list? They have all been nice. I asked one of them how they got my name and other information. He said he had purchased me and 20 other hot leads. I am hot, but not for what they want.
Yeah, it looks like Michael with an R, so I'm thinking like Reichel is probably the name, Reichel.
I'll go with that.
Reichel, if you go to Google and ask it anything, the first three answers that you get is it usually a company that's spent money with Google, so they get their first position. There's also data mining. Companies nowadays that search social network and different emails. I don't know what all they search, but they can come up with, lists of people in Boise who have expressed an interest in buying a home in the next, 3 months.
Right.
And then these companies, they sell these lists to realtors.
Yep.
A lot of first-time realtors. This is, how they come up with their clients.
Well, it's incredible in this information age, the information that people can access and get. And another thing too, maybe you went online to a website like a Trulia or Zillow, which has several sponsored agents, or if you had your credit pulled. I don't know where they get it, but I know they can find it. I went to Trulia because I had a friend staying in Ajo, Arizona. And so I went on Trulia to look at the real estate and everything. I get things every day. People saying, are you moving to Ajo, Arizona? And I go, no, I just wanted some information. So, Raquel, these people, they buy these hot leads. But I'll give you for instance, there was a website for government and bank repossessed homes. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I specialized in. It looked like a good site. And I could buy the Boise area. So anyone that went to the
the Boise expressed interest in government-owned homes, I would get their lead. And then a mortgage lender would also get that lead.
Right.
Well, they also had one for HUD Homes USA, which is similar to government foreclosure, but they were getting the same information on all these various sites and then selling them all to different realtors. By the time I got a letter from bankrepo.com, it had already been sent out to 10 other people who had bought the exclusive rights for Boise. I got nothing but, false names, bad telephone numbers, emails that didn't go through. And she was just one of the lucky ones that put the right name, the right phone number, and the right email address, and she's probably been sold 20 times.
Yep, and anytime you have something like that, all you need to do is to be asked to be removed from their call list, and they have to comply with the federal do not call regulations.
But that's why you're getting all the calls. Let's see, the next one comes in from Ken and Jenny. Riddle me this, Batman. I was recently approved for a $175,000 automobile loan with nothing down in 10 minutes, and the collateral for the loan literally has wheels. Also known as it can be easily gone in 60 seconds or less. Now, let's talk about my 3-week document gathering exercise to qualify for a home loan secured by real estate bolted to a foundation sitting on real dirt as collateral. What's wrong with this picture other than everything? I kind of remember with the old Batman, I could just see pow and bam, coming out of his mouth.
They sound a little frustrating.
Well, it is. You go in, you can buy a $175,000 car in an afternoon, and it takes 30 to 40 days for a mortgage lender to make a loan on a house that's got better collateral. It doesn't seem to make sense.
It's harder for the lender to get that collateral back. And obviously, and part of that is because these loans are sold, and you have to represent certain things. And so the investors on the other end, as we talk about investor guidelines, there's certain things that they want to see from a borrower, and in all fairness too, be glad you can't go in and buy a home in 10 minutes. There's a lot of people who would rush right in not knowing what they're getting into. So there are some protections there, but if you stop making the payments on your car, they'll come get it pretty quick. You stop making the payments on your home, it's a lot longer.
Yeah, it could take 6 months, a year longer.
And in Idaho,
for the bank to get them back.
Idaho, we're a non-judicial foreclosure state, so usually 6 months. You go to other parts of the country where we're hearing backlogs of foreclosures for 4 years. So there's a lot of risk involved with that.
And I always tell people, always just pretend you were going to lend $175,000 to a stranger. What would you want checked? What due diligence would you want? What would you want in the contract? I mean, just a contract alone, I would want to have a full-time bodyguard or security person following them around, make sure nothing happened to them.
Well, and I would assume, Ken and Jenny, if you have the credit and the income to qualify for a $175,000 automobile loan, you need to talk to your lender because something doesn't seem right.
Well, and if they're buying that expensive a car, they're probably buying $500,000 up. So now you have all the rules. It's not your standard FHA or VA.
It's a jumbo loan.
It's probably a jumbo loan or something. They're going to make you jump through a few more hoops.
Well, and part of that too, I hear this a lot on the other side with loan officers not being prepared, or what I call piecemealing a deal together. We've done enough deals together over the year. I send them a list right up front prior to our meeting. Please bring all these items. If you can't bring them with you, we'll still be asking.
And I think some people feel that they should just bring everything all at once. I always say, as you find it, turn it in.
Right.
And don't wait 3 weeks, because if they keep the supply of information coming into the mortgage lender, then it's right in your face all the time. You don't forget about it. It's the old greasy wheel. The squeaky wheel gets the grease type thing.
But
so
if we have everything up front, it's a lot easier to submit your file and get it into underwriting much faster. The faster you can get the information to your lender, the faster they can go if they're on point with what they're doing.
So, and I tell everybody, no matter who you are, they're going to treat you like a drug dealer. They're going to want to know where all the money's coming from, where the money's going to come from in the future. They're going to want anything financially, they're going to want to document to the penny. And then they have to have the home appraised to make sure that the collateral value is there. Many times there's a home inspection. Lenders are a little reluctant to order the appraisal till they make sure that there isn't anything dramatically wrong with the house. There's title work that has to be done. Sometimes takes longer to find payoffs on mortgages.
Liens.
Checking with the homeowners association. It can literally be a nightmare trying to get, Joe Blow, that's your next door neighbor, who's also the HOA president, to ever get back during business hours to say what's owed on the house.
Yep.
So, and it all takes time. And then there's new government regulations, Ken and Jenny, where the government's saying you have to have a certain amount of time. Like if Paul gives you a good faith estimate, you have to have 3 days to look at it before he can send or do any other work.
Well, and even under the new federal regulations, Ken and Jenny, and this is something that was implemented by the government, certainly not by the lenders, you can't close a deal if you're financing a deal. Even if everything goes smooth and you give everything up front, appraisal comes back, you can't sign it for at least 7 days.
At least 7 days.
At least 7 days. So, and that's the absolute fastest you could close. Now
you can buy a gun quicker than that.
Well, if you want one.
I'll be darned.
So
anyway, that's the answer to Ken and Jenny. Joan C. Is it your turn or my turn? It's your turn.
So we've got Joan C. writes, and this is a very interesting question. My son wanted to know if I had W-2s for him going back to 2008.
And here it is, the end of April 2014, 15?
Yep, 15. He's 26 and still lives at home. The lender's processor asked for them. Why would anybody need something from that far back?
This is one of the first questions that came in this week, and we've been kind of bouncing this back because that is pretty odd.
I've only seen this a few times before, and it's as a result of something that less.
My thoughts were that, Joan, maybe your son worked for a family business, and they kind of want to see the track record. Maybe he's had a track record of having more than one job. I've had this happen to me where I had my real estate career, maybe another part-time job. I've always been kind of a workaholic, and I know when it comes to like part-time jobs, they're going to want to see a track record of part-time jobs. So they may want to go back and show that he had 2 W-2s for many, many years as part-time work.
Right.
Or maybe, if he got paid some as a contractor, some as an employee to put the two together. You brought up an interesting one, I think.
And I certainly hope it isn't the circumstance here, but I have seen scenarios over the years where somebody's been incarcerated. And if they can prove that they were employed up until the point in time that they were incarcerated, and then they, gained employment as soon as they were released, that is about the only time I've seen that. And I certainly hope that's not the case here for you.
And Joan, I just kind of give you some peace of mind. There are some strange things they ask for. I mean, whenever I hear of any of these funny things that underwriters ask for, I try to put them on the show. Going back this many years, 6 years for W-2.
I question why.
It's probably, Joan, they're trying to help your son. They're trying to build an argument for an underwriter to let him do something they normally don't do. Either shortness of employment or type of employment or number of jobs or something of this nature.
Right.
The next one comes in from Pierre. Pierre says, I recently saw a placard at the credit union that said home loans as low as 2.75%. Is this something only CUs have, or is it a new loan program? Well, I know it's not a new loan program.
Nope.
It's probably, you said, a 15-year.
Most likely, and the credit unions will market because that rate kind of draws you in. But a lot of times you'll see they'll post their either a 10-year ARM or the 15-year. Most commonly, it's the 15-year rate.
And I know when at the first of the show when we talked about how interest rates have fallen again this week, Freddie Mac reported at the 15-year was pretty close to this 2.7. I think it was 2.9.
Right.
So that it could be a 15-year loan, and a lot of people are choosing now to do the 15 versus the 30 with interest rates so low.
And always
especially on refinances and so forth.
And of course, doing what I do for a living, I always like to read the small print. So the other day I was in Fred Meyer's, and they have the Chase branches inside of there, and they've got a rate posted. But then you go up and you read it, and it's the buy down rate. So, with
the paying points.
Yeah, paying points to actually buy the rate down. So you see it in big bold numbers, and then you get up there, and my eyes aren't that great, so you get up to where you're about 2 inches from it so you can read the fine print, and the devil's always in the details.
Well, and I haven't had my glasses for about 3 weeks, so I feel like I'm going to see again. But I have seen these different things say 2.5 or 2.75. And I think a lot of people forget that you can buy down interest rates. If it's right now 3.5%, One, you could do a 2-1 buy down. It costs less than 3%, and that would make your first year interest rate like 1 3/4. Your next year 2 3/4, and then it'd be 3 3/4 for the rest of the loan. And if you're just starting off on a job and probably not going to reach your full pay potential for 3 years, something you might want the seller to pay for. There's points that if you're maybe on the line between, let's say 2 3, 3 3/4 and 4, that by paying 1 or 2 points, they'll give you the lower rate.
Yep.
But I'll tell you one of the things I see, and it's really in our Denver office, more and more people are going with a 10-year ARM. It's right around 2.5% interest. It's 2.5% interest for 10 years, and then it can adjust. But when you look at some of these adjustments, they're adjustments you could probably live with, about maybe 1.5% increase per year, and they have a ceiling where they can't ever be more than like 7.5%.
So about a 5% cap.
Sure, and that would take about another 8 years for it to get there. So, you're pretty safe for 12 to 13 years, and a young couple might want to take advantage of these lower interest rates. So, just because it says ARM, adjustable rate mortgage, I would suggest everyone look into the programs. If you want a nicer home but can't afford it, or the home that you want, you need a lower payment in order to qualify for it, you might want to look at one of these 10-year ARMs. They even have ARM loans for investors. And I always say it's buying low, selling high, and one of the biggest problems investors have is they never sell. Well, if you get yourself a 5-year ARM at a much lower interest rate, you're going to have better cash flow, better return, and then that's going to force you to sell that property when the market's high enough.
A little extra motivation to market that thing for sale. Yep.
And a lot of times, if you'll live your life this way, you'll always have nice new inventory. You'll always have them rented at top of the market. And you'll find, usually over a 3 to 5 year period, if you buy right, the 25% you put down to buy it, you can get that back plus that much more. And one home can become 2.
Right.
And you get double the appreciation, double the tax benefits. It just and then 3 years down the road, have 2 become 4. You get 4 rental units, and you're pretty much not going to have to pay federal income tax. You're going to be earning enough equity that you can start selling one a year and greatly supplement your income.
It can change your lifestyle.
So it's well worth looking into. So thanks for the question, Pierre.
Yeah, that was a good one.
The next one, is it my turn? I forgot.
I'll take this one. So
Okay.
Lorraine writes in, and Lorraine says, I have never used my veteran benefit to buy a house. How much of a house could I buy if I put nothing down and did not want a payment over $1,150 to $1,250 per month? Pretend I have a good job and good credit.
I can just see Lorraine typing this up. She's probably renting right now for between at $1,150. Her lease is up. We all know that rents are way high.
Yep.
If she was paying $1,150, it's probably now $1,250. And she said, well, maybe I should use my VA entitlement.
Right.
So I don't want to pay more than rent. Sounds like the typical millennial, right? So how much of a house can I buy? And I was just kind of doing it in my head, Lorraine. It's about $5 per thousand. So, if you go up to 200,000, you're there at about $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have taxes and insurance on top of that. So
Price range, when I ran the numbers, is about $205,000 to $225,000 to stay in that price point. And the great thing with the VA loan, Lorraine, is most people don't recognize. I've talked to several people. As a matter of fact, I've got one right now. He's like, well, I don't even know if I'm eligible. I'm like, well, did you have an honorable discharge? He's like, yeah, I have a DE 214. I said, send it in.
Yeah.
And he was looking to buy a home, and all of a sudden he thought he had to put 20% down. Now he's getting 100% financing using his VA entitlement and a VA.
And it can take a while to get your certificate of entitlement, even if you have a DD 214.
Actually, with the new online portal, we had it in 48 hours.
Oh, that's good, because there was a waiting period there for a while.
There was, but now with the being able to do it online is much faster.
Great, and I see a lot of vets coming back saying, I want to use my VA entitlement. And now there's VA Idaho housing too.
Well, yeah, Idaho housing, I mean, it's just basically
A different rate structure, right?
really it is, because you have your VA loans, USDA, FHA, conventional. You have all the same loan programs. It's just that, usually with Idaho housing, they do offer some things.
So Lorraine may want to look at regular VA, and she may also want to look at
Yep.
VA Idaho housing. Might get her a little bit more, might kick it up from 215 to 220, 225.
Might get a lower rate, and in some cases too, you can even get some gift funds, so you wouldn't have to do 100% financing, because we've had people in the past where you try to run them with 100% financing, we couldn't get an approval. So we look at it and we say, all right, well, we can adjust the interest rate here, you can get basically points from Idaho housing to buy it down.
So instead of having to come up with 5% of 225,000, they might have to come up with 5% of 20,000, a little bit more than.
Well, in this case, they didn't have to come up with anything, because Idaho housing allowed us to use their gift program, a little bit higher interest rate. So we took them, instead of having a 100% VA loan, the system didn't like that when it read it. So we put in there 3% gift funds from Idaho housing, ran it with a 97% first and the 3% gift, and they got an acceptance.
Oh.
And they still had zero down.
That's some pretty good thinking on your part. Now, I know that we just mentioned adjustable rate mortgages, and they are coming back, and they have some good protection devices. And for the right people, for instance, here's a for instance. Let's say you have grandma and grandpa, and they're 97 years old, they're quite wealthy, and you know you're going to get a sizable estate. Well, if you get an adjustable rate mortgage, when you obtain the estate, you can apply it against the mortgage, and your house payment actually goes down. We're on a regular 30-year fix. You can put a big sum of money down. You still have the high payment. It just pays it off sooner. So, that can be a benefit as well. Now, I know that FHA has an ARM program. It's not a bad program.
FHA, VA, and USDA, I mean, FHA and VA pretty much mirror one another.
They do?
Yeah.
And they normally say that it can't go up more than 1% a year. It can't go up more than 5 times over the life of the loan. It not only can go up, but it can also go down.
Right.
And we've seen them go down. If you take an FHA at the lower rate and wait for it to start adding on the 1% increase,
Right.
well, you can go out 7 years and it's still equal to or less than the FHA rate today.
Right. And
So, if you think that there's a chance that you may only live there 7 years, even under worst case scenario, you're not paying more.
well, and this question kind of lends to something too. The adjustable rates, obviously, the market's always unpredictable, but I always say they're situational. So a great example of that is for somebody who's in the military, knows they're going to be relocating every 3 to 5 years.
And you're going to be selling.
Yeah, and so a 30-year fix doesn't necessarily make sense when maybe a 7/1 ARM
Makes a lot more sense.
gives them the protection in case something happens, but they have time. So it's always situational.
And, even another way of looking at it is get the lower interest rate and figure out what the payment would be at a 30-year fix and make that payment. You'd be surprised, applying principal right from the get-go on the loan really pays it down quickly.
Well, that, and with those two where they're assumable, find another veteran. If you're transferring, find another veteran who can come in and assume that loan, and then you can make a sizable gain on it.
Especially if you have a good interest rate. That's going to be a marketable asset on the property. If you can say, hey, vets, I'm a vet, I have a home, and it's 3.5%,
Yep.
and interest rates have gone up to 5%, people will pay a premium for the house to get that lower interest rate.
Absolutely, they will. Yep, it's a
So-
great marketing tool.
So let's see, the next one came in from
Chris.
Chris says, why is the housing inventory so low? I've looked at every home in Boise priced under $230,000 with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a 2-car garage, and it only took me 2 weekends. If I could save $20,000, would it be worth considering Nampa? And Chris, there really isn't a lot of inventories. A lot of times I'll pick out the best 3-bedroom or bigger, 2-bath or bigger, 3-car garage, newer home. And there might only be 17 in the whole Boise area. And if you go out and look at 8 or 9 each day, you can see everything is available for sale,
Right.
which is, unlike the stock market, we have thousands of different financial offerings. There's no way you could see which is the best buy to invest in that week. But here in Boise, you can actually get in a car and go look at every property that you're looking for that's for sale. Find the very best one. So you lose a lot of that cognitive dissonance, that fear of buying, because you know you've looked at everything.
You've exhausted all the options.
And you take the best possible option, and
Right.
you know you got the best deal on the market today. Now, yeah, you can go to Nampa and it's going to be cheaper. But if you're going to buy the same kind of home you've been looking at here in Boise for only $20,000 less in Nampa, you're not getting a good deal. That $230,000 home that you've been looking at in Boise, you shouldn't be paying more than $175,000 most. So you'd have to get a much bigger discount than $20,000 to make it, worth your while. And when I say worth your while, it has nothing to do with, whether or not you're going to want to drive to Nampa and back each day. It just has to do with value.
Well, and Canyon County property taxes are higher too. So while you may be paying less for the home, you may want to check and see where your payment washes out by the time you apply the property taxes.
A lot of people still think that Nampa taxes are cheaper than Boise taxes, and I'm finding almost double.
Yeah, it's one of the higher ones that I've seen in the area, and it borders Ada County. So
sure. And so, Chris, you might want to change some of your parameters. Maybe you're looking at just brand new homes. Maybe you could kind of expand the age. I'd really have to look at your search parameter, because a lot of times people put something in like, and I want a fireplace. Well, just by wanting a fireplace may take 20 homes off the market for you to look at. And now a fireplace can be added in a lot of homes.
Sure.
So, or you might say it has to have a master bedroom on the main level. That could throw out 15, 20 homes. So if I knew the exact search parameter, there might be more homes to look at.
Well, and I think to answer Chris's first question, why is housing inventory so low? I mean, right now we're in an extremely strong, robust market like we haven't seen in years.
We have the lowest interest rates of all times. I mean, who would ever thought they'd get below 4% again? Can you imagine 2 years ago getting an adjustable rate mortgage for like 2%, and it's going to be going up, only to have it stay the same for the last couple of years?
Well, we've been very fortunate. Who knows how long it's going to go on. But I mean, Chris, that's just a really, your analysis is really good. Right now there's less than 3 months inventory. Mm-hmm. They're building like crazy. You don't have to drive.
Well, and far. Like Lorraine, who wanted to do this guesstimate, I'll buy if it's no more than rent.
Right.
Well, landlords, they're doing the same thing. They're going, prices are good, interest rates are good, I'm making nothing on my investments. I know I can pay cash and get a 6% return, which might be double what they're making now, plus some other great benefits like appreciation.
Tax benefit.
Yeah, and so they're saying, what's the most I can spend and still run it out for $1,250 and break even? Because even if I break even on cash flow, I'll make it up on appreciation, equity buildup, and tax savings.
Well, and today at lunch I was watching CNBC or MSNBC, and they actually had a housing analyst on there talking about the market. She said, and this is a nationwide survey, so it's not indicative of our area, but it's not far off. She said right now across the country we're seeing 4.9% rent increases, and occupancy rates are over 95% nationwide.
Well, that's right where we're actually a little worse than that. I mean, vacancy is much smaller. Yeah. So I mean, homes, as soon as they become vacant, they're renting within a week.
Yep.
And then we have rents going up. They've gone up about 8%, 8 to 10%, and where home prices have gone up about 5 to 7%.
Right. Yeah,
so,
and I had this conversation with someone earlier today, and he's like, well, maybe I just should wait for 2 years, because the homes I want are about $20,000 to $40,000 more than I'm willing to pay right now. I said, well, but what's that home going to cost in 2 to 4 years?
It's going to cost $20,000 to $40,000 even more.
And interest rates go up on top of that, so you're not only are you paying more, but your payment's going up because you're going to now get hit with appreciation and higher interest rates.
And I think most young first-time homebuyers, they don't realize that home prices go up. I mean, they only remember home prices going down and mom and dad can't sell and grandma and grandpa lost their home. They don't know that that was just hopefully once every 3 or 4 generations happens type thing. But normally the American dream is you buy a nice home, you take care of it, and it goes up in value every year.
Yep.
So that mentality has to come back.
All right, so
Jason. I want to list everything I see that needs fixed with the house right on the offer, but the agent says I should hold off asking for repairs until the home inspection gets done. My thinking is I could ask for the major stuff, and if they say no, then I won't pay to have it inspected. Jason, the home inspection is a cost that a buyer needs. If you find a home you like, you need to do a home inspection, and they're going to run between $225 and $300 on the house. And there's some good home inspectors and there's some lousy home inspectors, and usually their liability is what you pay them, so there really isn't much recourse. But they'll find things you didn't know about, like heat ducts that have fallen down in the crawl space, and things on the roof that, roof tiles that need replaced, different things that you may have missed. And when you go back to ask the seller, they'll fix them because they need to be fixed. Unlike a home warranty, if you go out and spend $250 to $300 for a home warranty and you move in and it's broken or becomes broken that first year, you pay a small co-payment, usually $50, $60. They send over a top repairman who fixes it or replaces it with brand new. So it's kind of, do I do a home warranty? Do I do a home inspection? Or do I do both? And a lot of people do both. I can kind of see your agent. If you make an offer and you say, well, I'm going to offer $3,000 less, and I want them to pay 2% in closing costs, and I want the front door repainted, and I want new counter, they may not even accept your offer to begin with. But if you get the main points, I'll pay this much for it, I want this paid in closing costs, and I want the home to be in good condition. Well, that's a whole lot easier for a seller to swallow and say, okay, you've got a deal.
Right.
Well, now once that you have a deal, go ahead and get it inspected. If it's reasonable, they'll probably fix it. If they're not going to fix it, or they're not, and it has to do with electrical, plumbing, heating, or air, I would just go ahead and get a home warranty because all of those things are covered.
Well, and I see, Jason, from your agent's point of view, why not just do it once? I'm a huge proponent of home inspections.
I am too.
Unless it's new construction.
And I think most first-time buyers, they want too much added to the contract. Right. And a lot of times their contracts aren't considered because they ask for too much going in instead of finessing.
I heard of one recently where it was just flat rejected. Don't bother, no counter, no nothing. We got 2 other offers that were much more attractive, and they were accepted. But, like I was saying, I'm a huge proponent of home inspections. I really am, because, you're going to make the largest purchase you've ever made to this point, most likely, and to spend $250 or $300 to get good information, and sometimes that home inspection is what you need to walk away from the deal because it's not worth it. Other times it's great to say, hey, you know what? We're going to need, the heating and air conditioning system to test out, and maybe they need to replace that. And if the sellers don't, then you walk away from the deal. But, I think it's a great protection, but I wouldn't go in initially and ask for all that stuff up front, because if I was the listing agent, I'd say, why don't we wait to see what the home inspection turns out?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that would be typical. So it's not really good form, Jason, in negotiating. And I think your agent's probably giving you some, real good advice. Get the offer accepted, then do the inspection, then ask for the repairs. That's typically how I would think most people would do it. But I mean, if you think that other than those few items, the house is in pretty good shape, you might just want to ask for it up front, see if they'll fix it, and then not do the home inspection and do maybe a home warranty instead. Right. So some different ways to look at it, Jason. I think
I'll take the loan officer one. How's that?
Oh, you take the loan officer. We're almost out of time, but we have enough to answer it. So go ahead and take Blake.
All right, so our last question comes from Blake. And Blake writes in and says, my loan officer knows I need to close quickly, and he has had everything for a week and hasn't even ordered the appraisal yet. I had to ask if I should get my insurance switched over to a new property. It's like he's waiting for something or wanting something, but he hasn't asked. How do you put a fire under a loan officer?
Well, I've spent my whole life trying to figure out a way to put fires under loan officers. Loan officers have their own pace. A lot of them will come right out and say, no matter what you do, it's going to take 30 days, and it may take 40. I've had some loan officers that didn't even look at the closing date on the contract, which is just malfeasance as far as I'm concerned. And I see some people that do get that stare and they're like, where do we go from now? Or they're having so much fun doing the loan and talking to the people they want to stretch it out because they may not get a loan for a day or two. How soon should the appraisal be ordered?
Well, as quickly as possible, I guess. My question here is, I would call my loan officer and have a very frank conversation with him and say, do you understand what I'm up against? And I would assume too that the agent should be contacting as well as probably the selling agent, say, hey, why hasn't the appraisal been ordered yet? Now,
and it sounds like Blake's done, this isn't his first rodeo. He knows he's going to have insurance. Be proactive. Go to your insurance company, tell them you're buying a new home, have them go ahead and prepare the binder, have them call the loan officer for the lender information that has to go on the insurance binder, get it over to them.
Well, or either that, or I would ask the loan officer if you can talk to their processors, because really so much of that stuff is done by the processors. But, I guess my question to you, Blake, at this point in time, have you even received your disclosure packet from your loan officer? Because you've got to get your disclosure packet turned in, and you can do most of that electronically now. Have you done the home inspection? Has that come back?
And a lot of lenders will wait till the home inspection gets back. Why go out and spend somebody's $450 or $500 for an appraisal if the seller's not going to make the home repairs?
If you've got a pretty clean deal and they're good with it, you can go ahead and do it. But there's some of the paperwork stuff nowadays. Get the disclosures back. Follow some of the things. So first and foremost, have you gotten your disclosures? And if so, have you gotten them back to your lender? Then the question would be, all right, I've got that all turned in. Do you have everything else you need? When can we order the appraisal?
If somebody, you have a checklist, if everyone has everything done on the checklist, when will the appraisal be ordered?
Well, you should be able to order it right away. There shouldn't really be any stalling on that, because time is of the essence. Because now, once again, you've introduced another third party to the appraiser, and we don't know what their schedule's like. It's not like the old days when we would call up an appraiser and say, hey, I've got a purchase contract here for a home in Meridian and I need an appraisal done. Well, I can do it tomorrow or I can do it Friday. Great.
Or you could pull in a favor and say, I've sent you a lot of appraisal business over the year. Could you make a special favor and go do it after work?
So now the way it works is you send it into
a clearinghouse.
Well, basically it's a third party that works between the lender and the appraiser. And, as a loan officer now, we don't even take the appraisal payment information. In my case, my assistant does, but a lot of times it's the processor. They send that information in, then it goes out. So this clearinghouse, or what we call the AMCs, the appraisal management company, send out an email, kind of round robin style, and the first appraiser that grabs it gets the order. The problem with that I've seen is there are some appraisers that just kind of sit by the computer and harvest. And this is not everybody, but there are some. And then they get a whole bunch of orders, and then it takes them a week to get it versus saying,
how long are appraisals taking right now? About a week to 10 days?
Actually, they've been pretty good recently. As a matter of fact, a good example is, VA. Perfect example. They have up to 10 days. We have one that we ordered last Friday. The inspection was done yesterday, and we're supposed to have the appraisal either by the time I get back to the office tonight or tomorrow. So good turnaround time. But I'm seeing 3 to 5 days.
I see the floor manager's written down a question. When should you lock in a mortgage?
John, I would say under today's rates, I try to lock as quickly as possible, because this creates another issue with all the new rules and laws. So when I was talking earlier about disclosure. So once you come in, we go through the scenario, you identify a property, we issue a good faith estimate, we pull credit. Within 3 days, by law, we have to issue your disclosures to you. Now, if we issue your disclosures prior to locking the rate and then we lock it after, we have to completely redisclose again, and it just holds everything up. So I'm very, very big about locking up front. I don't try to time the market. I don't try to outthink the market.
So if it's a good interest rate, if it's good enough that made you want to buy a home and it's still available when you find a home, lock it in.
Who do you know that can outtime the market?
I don't know anyone. And I've always said, get it locked and get it closed.
Are you comfortable with this payment? Because here's the thing. The rates can certainly go down, but they can always go up too. So you're gambling with your own money.
And I'll tell you, sellers, it used to be if you went a few days over, no problem. We'll do it next week. it seems like today, if you go past the closing date, sellers, they want some reimbursement for giving you a few extra days.
But if you think about it, most cases, they've already found another home. They're expecting closing, so there's a domino effect.
And on some loans, if you don't close them right on the first, you end up having to pay a full month's interest.
Yep.
So it does end up costing the seller $1,000 or more if they go past that time frame.
I'm seeing very savvy agents right now put daily per diems in if you go beyond the closing date. Now, to that, I would say as long as that selling agent's on point with everything and gets everything in, if there's an inspection, perfect example, if there's an inspection and there's an inspection contingency, when can we expect that the work's going to be completed so we know that it's done in time and ensure that the owner is getting the home in the condition they've wanted? So there's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, and you don't want to order an appraisal if they're going to paint or recarpet or anything like that.
Yeah.
You want to make sure all the work's done so they get the highest appraisal possible too. So anyway, we've got some good questions, and it just proves that while you're watching Property Line Today, if you do have a question, you can call it in at 830-2557, and you might have it answered on today's show. But if we made some of the thoughts happen in your head and you come up with a question after the show's over, go to www.propertylinetoday.net and go to ask a question, and Paul and I will answer it next week.
Thank you, guys.
So just to summarize, home prices are up, rents are up, interest rates are down, inventory's there, but
it's kind of becoming a feeding frenzy.
It's
again.
a little bit of a feeding frenzy, so that's where we're at this week. And I'm sure looking forward to those Mayflowers, aren't you?
Oh, it's time.
Yeah, we've had a few showers here. So anyway, until next week, folks, keep your feet on the ground, but keep reaching for the stars. And may God bless each and every one of you. Bye now. Eagle Home Mortgage, like most strong and stable S&P 500 companies, allows you to go online, get the answers to your questions, calculators so you can compare what's best for you, and even apply for the loan. Because Eagle Home Mortgage is a large national company, they offer the full range of standard and niche products at very competitive rates. What makes Eagle Home Mortgage different is the entire process of getting the loan from pre-approval through funding is done here in the Valley by people you know and trust. Whether you're a first-time buyer or an experienced homeowner, you'll appreciate the peace of mind that comes from having a local loan officer listen to your particular needs and determine what loan is best for you. Having a local in-house staff to process and underwrite your loan assures that you'll have a smooth and on-time closing. Eagle Home Mortgage is located at 729 South Bridgeway Place, just north of the river in Eagle, or call 208-938-3245, or go to eaglehomemortgage.com and click Idaho.